you know, your dad died. And this was exactly 2 months before a contest. She says, do you come home to the funeral? I said, no. It's too late, you know, he's dead, there's nothing to be done.
You know, your dad died, and this was exactly 2 months before a contest. She says, do you come home to the funeral? I said, no, it's too late. You know he's dead. There's nothing to be done. At 78, Arnold Schwarzenegger has done almost everything a man can do. Bodybuilding, music king, movie star, governor. But the story he doesn't tell on stage is the one that shaped him most. So therefore, I have to cut my emotions off and be kind of cold in a way when before competition. And so that's what you do then with the rest of the things. Music, it starts in a small Austrian village in a house with no flushing toilet with a snort's father who came home at night and made everyone afraid. 2 boys grew up in that house. Only one of them made it past 25. Music, and decades later, Arnold asked a Jewish human rights group, Music, to dig into his own father's past, knowing what they might find. This is the full story. The House in Thal. Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger was born on July 30th, 1947 in the small village of Tal near Graz in the Austrian state of Syria. He entered the world in a country that had just come out of war and disgrace. And he grew up in a home he would later describe in deeply unsettling terms. His father, Gustav Schwarzenegger, worked as a local police officer and postal music inspector. His mother, Aurelia Rayadrini, had already been touched by loss before Arnold was born. Her first husband had been killed in the war. She married Gustav in October 1945, only 2 months after the war ended. Together, they had 2 sons. Minhard Music was born in 1946, and Arnold followed a year later. Those were hard years in Austria. Arnold later described it as a country filled with music, broken men, and in his view his father was one of them. Gustav had served in the Wehrmacht and fought at Stalingrad, one of the most devastating battles of the war in Europe. Arnold said his father had once been buried under rubble for 3 days. Then he returned to a defeated country that was occupied, humiliated, and deeply damaged. Arnold spoke about this in his 2023 Netflix docuseries Arnold. He said his father had been buried under collapsed buildings and rubble for 3 days, and then came home after losing the war. He said Austria was a country of broken men, and that his father clearly struggled at times. That is one way Arnold has tried to understand him. Yet the story inside the house was far darker. Arnold has described a father whose behavior could shift without warning. At times he was kind. At other times he came home drunk in the middle of the night, shouting and frightening everyone in the house. Arnold recalled waking up with his heart pounding because he knew his father might strike his mother or lose control at any moment. That snort's fear shaped the atmosphere of the home. Life for the children followed a harsh routine. Arnold has said that he and his brother had to earn breakfast through exercise. He has also said they were pushed to compete against each other. Along snorts, with that came beatings which he has spoken about directly when describing the brutality at home. One detail says a great deal about the damage inside that family. 2 young brothers were pushed into rivalry for food, praise, and approval. That pressure did not stay in childhood. Its snorts left deep marks. One brother grew into an almost unmatched competitor. The other would be dead at 24. Snorts. The family also lived with material hardship. Arnold has described growing up in a house without a flushing toilet. Water had to be carried in. Thal in the late 1940s and 1950s still reflected a Europe that had been torn apart, not only in its buildings, but also in its spirit. Whatever later success came into Arnold Schwarzenegger's life, it did not begin with comfort or privilege. This was the ground beneath everything that came later. The discipline, the fierce drive, the need to win, the hunger to escape, all of it took shape in that house. On Arnold's own account, the force that pushed him from Thal to bodybuilding fame, then to Hollywood, and then into politics grew out of life with a violent, fearful, damaged father in a defeated country. The question Arnold asked about his own father. The family story becomes even harder here. And this is also where Arnold's response deserves real respect. Gustav Schwarzenegger died in 1972. Years later, in the late 1980s, newspaper reports began to claim that he had been a member of the Nazi Party. Arnold did not try to block the story or hide from it. Instead, in July 1990, he went to Rabbi Marvin Heyer of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles and asked the organization to investigate his own father's past. Music, that was a remarkable step. Arnold was already one of the most famous men in the world. He also had political ambitions. Even so, he asked a Jewish human rights organization, one known for pursuing the truth about Nazi history, to examine his father's record without any promise of what they might find. The investigation lasted 2 months. It found that Gustav Schwarzenegger had applied for membership in the Nazi Party Music in 1938, shortly before Germany annexed Austria, and that he was accepted in 1941. The Wiesenthal Center confirmed his army record and his party membership. At that time, music, however, it found no evidence linking him to war crimes and no evidence that he had been a member of the SS or the SA. For a while, that seemed to settle the matter. Then, in August 2003, while Arnold was running for governor of California, a Los Angeles Times investigation uncovered more. Reporters searched the Austrian State Music Archives in Vienna and found documents that had been sealed until the year before, which was 30 years after Gustav's death. Those records showed that his involvement had gone further than anyone had known. The key entry was brief but important. SA 1.51-1939. It showed that Gustav Schwarzenegger had joined the Schurtermabteilung, the Nazi Party's paramilitary brown shirts, on May 1, 1939. That placed him in the organization after the Annales and within months of Kristallnacht, when the SA had played a central role in anti-Jewish violence. Rabbi Heyer responded with clarity. He said, "Everyone knows what the SA and the Nazi Party stood for." He added that Arnold was not proud of his father's membership in either organization, and that the truth was deeply embarrassing. Music, even so, Pierre made the central point plainly. Arnold could not be judged by his father. He also answered the political question directly. In his view, Gustav's record music should have no bearing on Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. After the war, Austrian authorities allowed Gustav to return to police work in 1947 because they had found no evidence tying him to specific war crimes. He died of a stroke on 13th of December, 1972 in Weizsäria at the age of 65. The Wiesenthal Center later, Music, explained why its 1990 investigation had not uncovered the SA record. The relevant file had remained sealed until 2002 under Austrian archival rules, which kept Music. It closed for 30 years after Gustav's death. The record simply had not been available in 1990. Once it came to light during the 2003 campaign, Rabbi Heyer publicly committed to further research and full disclosure. What matters most is what Arnold did with that legacy. Over the years, he gave large sums to the Simon Wiesenthal Center, with reports putting the total close to $750,000 by 2003. He also, Music, worked with Jewish organizations for decades. In September 2022, he traveled to Avits-Birkenau Music in Poland with the Avits Jewish Center Foundation as part of a public effort to speak out against anti-Semitism and hate. That fact carries real weight. The son of a man who had belonged to the SA went Music to Avits and urged people to end hatred. Snorts, there is nothing Music hidden about that. It is a direct and serious confrontation with the darkest part of his own family line. One point should stay clear. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in 1947, 2 years after the war had ended. He played no role in any of it. He made none of those choices. What came down to him was the aftermath. A damaged father and a country still full of wounded men. Rabbi Heyer's judgment remains the right one. Arnold cannot be judged by his father. He can be judged by what he did after learning the truth. And what he did was face it head-on, ask for the investigation himself, and spend years fighting the same hateful ideology his father had once joined. The brother Hard Schwarzenegger was Arnold's older brother. He was 1 year older, and by every account, he was the more vulnerable of the two. On 20th of May, 1971, Linhard died in a single-vehicle crash on a mountain road while driving drunk. He was Music, 24 years old. His car hit a telephone pole. He left behind a son, Patrick Knapp Schwarzenegger, who later became a lawyer. Arnold has never described this as a meaningless accident. He has spoken about it as the result of what their music childhood did to his brother. He said he believed Maynard began drinking because their upbringing was so hard. He spoke of the brutality in the home and the beatings they sometimes received from their parents. In Arnold's view, Maynard simply could not carry that weight. He said his brother had a more delicate nature. That is an extraordinarily painful thing to say in public about one's own family. It turns the story of Arnold's rise into something more tragic and more revealing. Music, two brothers were shaped by the same harsh home. One found a way to turn pressure into ambition and escape. The other never reached 25. Arnold has in effect acknowledged that he was the one who got out. Then there is one more family detail that almost feels too heavy for fiction. In August 1998, Aurelia Schwarzenegger went to visit her husband's grave at Vit Cemetery. While she was there, she suffered a heart attack and died at the age of 76. She was later buried beside him. By then, she had lived long enough to see her surviving son become the most famous Austrian in the world. She had already lost her first husband to war. She had buried her eldest son at 24. She had buried Gustav at 65. In the end, her own life closed beside the grave of the man whose violence, Arnold Music, has said, helped destroy their older child. The funeral story and what it reveals about Arnold himself. There is one more part of the Schwarzenegger story that says a great deal about Arnold, though not in the way people usually think. For many years, one of the most repeated stories about his ruthlessness came from the 1977 documentary Pumping Iron. In the film, Arnold Music said he had not attended his father's funeral because it would have interrupted his training. That anecdote became a famous part of his image. It seemed to prove that he was so focused, so cold, and so driven that even his father's death would not pull him away from preparation. Later, the film's director, George Butler, revealed something striking. He said the story was not really Arnold's. According to Butler, Arnold had taken it from a boxer and used it as if it were his own in order to strengthen the image he wanted the public to see. That of a man who never let personal matters interfere with athletic goals. That changes the meaning of the anecdote. The famous example of Arnold Schwarzenegger's extreme discipline may have been a borrowed story attached to his own father's death because it served the legend he was building. This detail is revealing in its own way. It shows that Arnold understood music very early, that he was creating a public character. He knew how stories worked. He knew how music myth worked. He understood that a persona could be shaped, sharpened, and sold. He did this in bodybuilding, then in film, and later in politics. That may be his deepest talent of all. Long before most people spoke about branding or image making, Arnold Schwarzenegger already knew that he could build Arnold Schwarzenegger. He approached it with the same intent, the same patience, and the same control that he once brought to building his body. The conquest. Even now, music, the rise feels hard to believe. In 1968, Arnold left Austria for the United States at just 21 years old. He arrived with an extraordinary body, very little English, and almost no money. What he did next sounds unreal. Yet he did it step by step. First, he won Mr. Universe. Then, he took over bodybuilding and won the Mr. Olympia title 7 times. That matters even more when you remember what bodybuilding was in the late 1960s. It was snorts, not a path to money, status, or fame. It lived on the edge of popular culture. Most Americans saw it as strange, and the men who pursued it were often treated like curiosities. There were only a few serious gyms, very little money, and almost no wider respect for the sport. So when Music Arnold said he would use bodybuilding to become a movie star, the idea sounded absurd. No one had done that before. The very body that made him a champion also made music people in Hollywood think he could never fit in. He was too big, too foreign, too heavily accented. And even his surname seemed too long for a marquee. Still, he kept going. Every expert he asked, Music, told him it could not be done. He proved them wrong in film, and later he did the same in politics, where music many people raised the same doubts for snorts, the same reasons. He has also spoken openly music for many years about using anabolic steroids during his competitive career. At the time, they were legal and available by prescription. He says he used them under medical supervision. He has also long maintained that his heart condition is congenital and not connected to that use. In 1983, he became a naturalized United States citizen. Then Hollywood opened. Conan the Barbarian in 1982 made him a movie star. The Terminator in 1984, directed by James Cameron, turned him into one of the most recognizable people in the world. One short line, "I'll be back," stayed with him for the next 40 years, and the world kept repeating it right back to him. After that came Predator, Total Recall, Terminator 2, True Lies, Twins, and Kindergarten Cop. By the late 1980s, and through much of the 1990s, he had become the highest paid and most bankable action star in the world. Then he did something even stranger. In 2003, he entered California's chaotic recall election for governor, the contest that removed Gay Davis, and he won. He served as governor of California from 2003 to 2011. He did it for 2 terms as a Republican in the largest, strongly Democratic state in America. To do it, he paused a film career that had been earning him tens of millions of dollars a year. That is why the full shape of his story stands alone. Snorts, an immigrant from a small village in Syria, arrived in America at 21, speaking broken English, and went on to lead the government of the world's 5th largest economy. Modern American public life has produced nothing quite like it. The allegations and the apology. This part belongs in the story, and it needs to be said clearly. Just days before the October 2003 recall election, the Los Angeles Times published Music, an investigation in which several women accused Schwarzenegger of groping or sexually humiliating them. The alleged incidents stretched across many years and took place on film sets and in other settings. After that report, more women came forward. Schwarzenegger did not dismiss the matter outright. Instead, he issued a public apology. He said he had behaved badly at times. He explained that on rowdy sets he had done things he once thought were playful, and that he now understood those actions had offended people. He said he was deeply sorry and apologized music to the women involved. 5 days later, he still won the election. That is the record. Multiple women made serious allegations. He publicly acknowledged wrongdoing in some form and apologized. No criminal proceedings followed. Voters chose him anyway. Each reader can decide what weight to give that, but no honest account of his life can leave it out. The Secret Son and the 10-year divorce. In 1986, Arnold married Maria Shriver, a journalist and member of the Kennedy family. She was the niece of President John F. Kennedy. Together, they had 4 children, Catherine, Christina, Patrick, and Christopher. Then came the secret that would break the marriage. In 1996, Arnold had an affair with the family's longtime housekeeper, Mildred Baena. In 1997, Joseph Benna was born only days after Arnold and Maria's youngest son, Christopher. For years, Mildred continued working in the Schwarzenegger household. At the time, the family believed her husband, Roelio, was Joseph's father. Arnold later described what happened with painful directness in the 2023 docuseries. He said that at first he truly did not know. Then, as the boy grew older, the resemblance became clearer and clearer. After that, the question changed. He was no longer wondering if Joseph was his son. He was wondering how long he could keep it quiet. He kept it quiet for about 14 years. The truth finally came out in a therapist's office. After his governorship ended in early 2011, Arnold and Maria began attending weekly counseling. During one session, the counselor brought the matter directly into the room. Arnold later recalled the moment in detail. Maria, music, wanted a clear answer about one thing. Was he Joseph's father? Arnold said that for a moment he felt as if his heart had stopped. Then he told the truth. Yes, Joseph was his son. Maria was devastated. After that, the public timeline unfolded quickly. On 9th of May, 2011, Schwarzenegger and Shriver announced their separation. On 16th of May, 2011, he publicly confirmed that he had fathered a child with the family's housekeeper. On 1st of July, 2011, Shriver filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. On 28th of December 2021, a Los Angeles judge finalized the divorce, so the legal ending took more than 10 years. During most of that time, there was almost no visible public movement in the case. Then, after a long silence, the process resumed and was completed. The financial terms remained private. Their children were all adults by then, so there was no custody arrangement, no child support order, and neither side sought spousal support. What also stands out is the restraint. Given the scale of the betrayal and the level of fame involved, the public silence was remarkable. There were no loud accusations, no bitter courtroom spectacle, and no media war. Maria Shriver also waited until Arnold's governorship had ended before confronting him directly. That choice protected California's sitting governor from a public scandal while he was still in office. And music, it says a great deal about her steadiness. Arnold, for his part, did not try to protect himself with excuses. On 60 Minutes in Music 2012, he said he had apologized many times to Shriver and asked for her forgiveness. He said he hoped that one day she would forgive him. He called her an extraordinary wife, friend, and lover, and said clearly that she did not deserve what he had done. He also said he hoped his children would forgive him in time. He admitted that each of them reacted differently when the truth came out, which quietly revealed how far the damage reached beyond the marriage itself. And yet, over the years that followed, the family found a way to remain functional and even warm in public. They have spent holidays together and shown up for major moments in their children's lives. In 2020, Shriver was photographed at Arnold's 73rd birthday celebration with their children. Then, in May 2025, Arnold made a joke at Amazon's upfront presentation that quietly showed how much peace had returned. Speaking about how Jingle All the Way still airs every December, he joked that he knows this because his ex-wife calls him about the residuals. He has also maintained a public relationship with Joseph Baena, music, who is now in his late 20s. Joseph has taken up bodybuilding and acting, and Arnold regularly acknowledges his birthdays in public. Arnold at 78. So what is true about Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2026? He is 78 years old, music, and he turns 79 on 30th of July, 2026. By every public sign, he is music alive, active, healthy, and intensely busy. The picture is not one of fading away. It is one of continued motion. Recent years have been packed with work. On 25th of May, 2023, at age 75, he made his scripted television debut in the Netflix action comedy Fubar, where he played a CIA operative opposite his on-screen daughter. On 7th of June, 2023, the three-part Netflix docuseries Arnold premiered. It covered bodybuilding, Hollywood, and politics, and included some of music, the most candid things he has ever said in public about his father, his brother, and snorts his affair. In October 2023, he published Be Useful, 7 Music Tools for Life, a self-help book built around the methods and habits that shaped his own life. On 25th of March, 2024, he revealed on Arnold's Pump Club that he had received a pacemaker. That same podcast has become one of his main ways of reaching a large audience with daily advice about health and fitness. Then, on October 30th, Music 2024, he publicly announced that he was voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Music, for a lifelong Republican, it was a very public break with his party's nominee and another sign that he has always preferred to act on his own judgment. By May 2025, he was still appearing on stage at major industry events, still telling jokes, and still sounding fully like himself. Alongside all this, he continues his policy work through the USC Schwarzenegger Music Institute for State and Global Policy, established in August 2012. He has also spent years speaking forcefully on environmental issues, especially in opposition to the United States leaving the Paris Climate Accord. So the clearest truth about Arnold at 78 is this: he is still in motion. He is still working, still training, still speaking, still building, still stepping into public life with energy that would be unusual in a much younger man. The body has been repaired many times. The private life has carried real damage. The public record includes triumph, scandal, pain, recovery, and reinvention. Yet the central fact remains unchanged. He keeps going.